Astropsych 400 podcast for sleep. It's time to go to sleep now. Time to surround yourself with positive vibes. You are who you are. Being weird is not a crime. There's some questions about love that people always ask. And the first one is, of course, why do people ask questions about love? People have a very large desire to comprehend what love is because, first and foremost, they believe that there are different types of love which can be experienced. People think that there are different bonds that we experience with our families, our friends, and our romantic partners. But let's not kid ourselves. There is a type of self-love that is very valuable, and it can easily turn into the concept of fueling one's ego. And some people flat out believe that the human ego is the concept of evil, and we need to get away from the ego and allow the collective consciousness of not only humanity, but also everything as we know it, come together. And some people believe that the collective consciousness, or the concept of everything, is what love truly is. That there is this force that is non-material, but it surrounds us, and the force that surrounds us is the very definition of love, because if it's always present, if it is everything, then it is unbreakable, and if we are all part of the collective unified force, then we should not bring pain and destruction and any type of harsh or cruel treatment toward one another, because we are all one. The same reason why you wouldn't bring pain to your own physical body by cutting off your arm or your leg. You wouldn't want to bring pain and destruction and cruelty and misery to the world in which you live in, because you are the world that you live in. That's why they call it love. It's about appreciation, respect, and understanding of existence, consciousness, and the collected unified everything. But there are other questions that we can explore, and one of them is, how much love is too love? I think that this question is heavily focused on the romantic aspect of love, and what some people need to realize is unreturned affection is very creepy. When someone is trying to make an advance, but someone else is trying to refuse that advance, or they aren't reciprocating it in the desired way, then that devolves into what we know as creepiness. Anytime there is a refusal, that is too much love. How much love is too much love? When someone refuses, a boundary has been crossed. What is the difference between man's love and a woman's love? I think that there are some very honest statements that we have to make about the nature of men and women. The male brain and the female brain function very differently. It was once said in an interview that I was watching that the male brain works differently when it comes to physicality, and the female brain can work differently when it comes to conventional learning. For example, a preschool boy can throw a ball twice as accurately as a preschool girl, but a preschool girl can learn words twice as fast as a preschool boy. But the problem is, our educational system doesn't recognize the concept of throwing a ball as a form of intelligence, but it is, because it's all about neurological functioning. And that's why some people think that we need to have separations of gender in our schools and our educational systems and our curriculum, because it focuses on the differences in the brain, and it's not about being politically correct, and it's not about being to this genderless ideal that so many people are striving toward. It's about being honest and saying there are differences between the male brain and the female brain, and that we can have very hands-on classes for boys, and then we can have more thoughtful, abstract classes for girls, particularly in the preschool, kindergarten, and very basic elementary educational levels. And on the note of education, some people believe that the answer to our public school system is not K through 12, but pre-K to 14. because the more education that somebody has, the less likely they are to be incarcerated, and the more likely they are to stay in the workforce, and they're paying more tax dollars, all of the above. So when it comes to the concept of love, the male brain and the female brain are different. Men are going to be more physical, and women are going to be more thoughtful. And on this channel, as well as on Black Box Phone Line Radio, my other YouTube channel, I frequently talk about Dr. Helen Fisher and the anatomy of love when she lays out the differences between dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen, and talking about how these are the governing components of brain chemistry. If you're testosterone centered, you're going to be very assertive, and testosterone is, of course, traditionally masculine. If you're estrogen centered, you're going to be more thoughtful and introspective. Estrogen is traditionally female centered. So I would definitely expect that male love will be more assertive, more demanding, more appreciative, as well as definitely more physical, whereas there will be more abstract thoughts in the female love. Who is the most loved person ever? I don't think that we could identify a single person. I mean, because I'm tempted to say Jesus, but there's so many variants on the story of Jesus, and it's really quite difficult to choose just one. And Jesus was someone who was crucified, but I think there's a lot of historical additives thrown into the story of Jesus. By that I mean you have the history, and then you have the alterations in literature. But as I said, he was killed at the end of his life. That's how he ended. So I don't believe that he could be the single most loved person, even though he has lived on. But it's very difficult to choose just one person. John Lennon once said that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus, and many people loved John Lennon, but there are also many people who hated them. Once someone achieves a certain level of fame and popularity, and sometimes it's only one or the other, either fame or popularity, then they are no longer able to be loved by everyone. Why do most people love based on appearance? I was watching a preview for the movie The Ugly Truth with Gerard Butler and Katherine Heigl, and I remember that there was one particular line where it said, when they talk about love at first sight, they're not talking about your personality, meaning people are very much involved with physical appearances. People do care about physical appearances, and there is a certain necessity for being honest about that. But people love based on appearances. Well, there are a couple reasons for this. The first is clear skin and symmetrical faces are signs of strong genetic health, and the way that our brains operate is a partner is desired for reproduction, prolonging the existence of one's own species, contributing to the continuation of one's own species, and to do so they want to seek out a partner who has clear skin and a symmetrical face. An interesting thing on that note is they say that people who are psychopaths or sociopaths tend to have extremely symmetrical faces, and while I haven't read this in an exact source, my hypothesis, or my hunch rather, is that it's because they are very welcomed by people who find them attractive, and they learn how to manipulate people who find them attractive, because just because someone is appreciated, it doesn't mean they won't try to manipulate. Why do people meet and love each other if there is no way they can be together forever? I think that people are very much involved with the moment. People also have things like feelings and urges and emotional responses, and a lot of people choose to live in the here and now. A lot of people choose to experience the world from a position of not worrying about the future, and there are different personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. If someone is extremely low in neuroticism, they aren't going to be worrying too much. And also, if we're going to get away from the traditional psychological terminology, I have made the observation that some people are thinkers and some people are doers. And you might already be wondering, well, are the people with traditionally female traits going to be thinkers and people with traditionally masculine traits doers? No, absolutely not, because it can be all across the spectrum of gender. If someone is a thinker, they're going to try and get lost in their own mind before they choose to act. Whereas if someone is a doer, they are going to act almost immediately. And I think a lot of people who would get caught up in a short-term romantic event would be the doers. They just want to do things without worrying about the consequences. And also, memory is very important for people who want to get into their older years, because they often look back on a life of memories. And there was even this meme on Facebook that was talking about how once you turn age 30, you're just telling stories about who you used to be. I'm 33 years old, and I can definitely verify that, and I can guarantee that that is correct. So people also want to have memories that they can look back on, even if it was only for one night. People will not forget. How can a person love another person? I think that the most honest way to answer this one is by being respectful, by being fair, by being empathetic. That is the true form of love, appreciating existence in itself. How can a person love oneself? By practicing self-care. And I frequently talk about this on these podcasts for sleep, about how Jesse Lee Peterson famously said that you should never be lost in your own imagination. You need to doubt everything that you are thinking. You're either telling yourself that you're better than someone, or you're putting yourself down. And it's a very broad statement, but there's a certain degree of truth to that. And the way that you could love yourself would be stop putting yourself down, stop telling yourself that you're better than anyone else, and stop getting lost in your imagination. Focus on the present, focus on the here and now, but show an appreciation for humanity at the same time. And as you see, there's so many things in life that are about balance. I often cite something from the book The Dream of Mortal Life, which says that it is a true mystery of humanity, balancing, for example, balancing the right to individuality with the responsibility to contribute to the collective well-being. You have the right to be who you are and the right to be who you want to be, but you also have a responsibility to contribute to the collective well-being, the well-being of society. If something is good for you, but it is physically harmful to somebody else, then most likely you should not do that. Exceptions, of course, will prove the rule. So there are many ways in which people can find ways around the system, but how can a person love oneself? By finding the balance of an appropriate way of thinking. People can love oneself by not getting lost in their imagination, by respecting their own body, and also by contributing to the collective well-being. Does self-love mean the same as selfless love? No, absolutely not, because through the self-help studies, and I know it said self-love, not self-help, but through the studies of self-help, we really find that a lot of it is focused on assertiveness training, and it's about not being selfless, but it is about standing up for yourself, saying no to people, and it is about developing an approach to life that focuses on your goals, on your achievements, on your accomplishments. It's about saying no to someone who is doing something unfair to you and recognizing that you cannot allow other people to do unfair things or harmful things or even mean and cruel things, especially when it has a greater consequence in not only your own well-being but also society. When I read this concept here of selfless love, I think that it's more talking about not wanting to appreciate your own well-being or sacrificing one's own well-being for the sake of the collective well-being. But that's inappropriate because, as we said before, we need a balance between the right to individuality and the contribution to the collective well-being. So what it seems like is some people are saying, don't care about yourself, only care about other people. But that is unfair to the person who is only caring about other people. What makes a person to be loved by more than the other? what makes a person to be loved by one more than the other. There are always going to be inequalities in life, and sometimes we need to avoid them. I used to give people the example of if you had 100 attractive points that you could share with your partner, and really they're beauty points, but I think attractive points is a little bit better. If you had 100 attractive points that you could share with your partner, like whether it's a husband or wife or two partners, and if you say 50-50, then you're going to be equally attractive. If you say 60-40, then one person is going to be more attractive than the other. What is the perfect arrangement? And one person once said that he wants to be at level 20 and he wants his wife to be at level 80 because they're going to think if he is a level 20, like a 2 out of 10, and she's an 8 out of 10, there must be something really amazing about this guy. But someone else also said, I think that we need to share everything. We need to be honest, fair, and equal. And if that is going to be equal, then we need to be 50-50. I want to be a 5 and I want my wife to be a 5. And then we simply have the harder realization that people are not numbers, and we can do all the mental exercises in the world, and we'll never actually have 100 attractive points to share and move around. So I think that choosing to appreciate humanity and love oneself is the answer to that question. What is the greatest thing about love? I know that this is perhaps the answer, not the answer that people actually want to hear, but I think it's the euphoria. And of course, you have the highs and the lows. You have the intense feelings and the low feelings. Well, an intense feeling can be both high or low. I guess the intense feelings of happiness and the intense feelings of sorrow. I'm a very passionate believer in the statement that we are not supposed to feel these types of saddening feelings like anger, sadness, depression. I don't think we're supposed to feel them. In fact, many people agree with me. This is why people try to avoid them. And I know we have things like the movie Inside Out, which contaminate that type of thinking. But I also think that we are going to move toward a greater ideal. And if we actually try to strive toward the ideal doesn't include anger, sadness, and depression. Therefore, it should be eliminated. At the same time, though, throughout the day, I don't know about you, but I experience moments of euphoria, whether it's because I had too much caffeine, or I'm remembering something wonderful from the past, or I have a new opportunity that I want to explore. I think that I am going to always really enjoy these moments of euphoria, and I do believe that's love. Falling in love romantically, falling in love spiritually, and even good times with friends and family in the past. The greatest thing for me about love is euphoria, but also, I shouldn't have used the word greatest because I think that it's also very valuable to talk about spiritual existence. Just recognizing that a form of divine love could truly be possible, then that might actually be the greatest thing about love, divinity. How many types of love exist in the universe? A lot. How many atoms are in the universe? I don't know. 1 times 10 to the 65th power, maybe. Why do people suddenly stop loving each other? John Sonmez of Bulldog Mindset famously said that you have friends because of expectations. Even if it's as simple as you expect your friend to be empathetic, a good listener, nice and polite, and when your friend is not empathetic, a good listener, nice and polite, that takes its toll on the relationship, and then ultimately, one person will end up terminating the relationship. So why do people suddenly stop loving each other? Some people are purely using other people for stimulation. Other people are believing that someone is not coinciding with their expectation, and they think that they are unable to maintain a relationship with them. And sometimes people will only use someone else to support their emotional needs and desires as well as their physical needs and desires, and when they cannot get what they want from someone, they will move on to someone else. Why do some people cannot move on from love? That's a very oddly worded question. Why do some people cannot move on from love? Perhaps they could have said, why can't people move on from love? I think it's because they expect it to be part of their life. They believe that it is something that should be present, that they deserve to be loved, and they do deserve to be loved, no matter who they are, and no matter what this person has done. Even if the person has committed horrible atrocities, they are still in need of love from someone. And the reason why they committed the horrible atrocities in the first place is because they didn't have love to begin with. Where does love live? Love lives within us, and love lives outside of us. Where does love begin? Love is a pure infinite. It is purely infinite. It does not have a beginning or an end. It always exists. It is always aware of its existence and present within its own existence. And that leads us to a form of faultlessness and perfection. In what form does love exist? Awareness. Ignorance is the opposite. Where does love end? It does not. It even goes beyond the realm of the material universe. What can love be compared to? I used one example before about euphoria, because I do think that is connected. Pleasantness, joy, heartwarming feelings. I think that those are some things that we can compare love to. Which human loved first? I often refer to this as the first human that was aware of his or her own conscious experience of existence. How do you measure love? How about a year? 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? How about love? So let's use a year. Who loves more, a man or a woman? Neither, because as we said, the male brain and the female brain function differently, and of course we need both of the traditional concepts. With the male brain, you're going to find someone who is going to be more assertive, more decisive, and someone who is going to be making more decisions. Whereas with the female brain, you're going to find one who is going to be more thoughtful and going to have a more fantasy-based approach to life that is going to be very valuable in a romantic relationship. Women perhaps are more thoughtful, but men also will perhaps set stronger boundaries. And I've said very clearly, based on my own observations of humanity, that some people are very focused on trying to maintain a relationship that is not going to succeed. And the reason why it's not going to succeed is because they are not showing an appreciation of both sides of the story. They just choose something that will not work and they hold on to that. Well, what would be some antidotes to that? Contributing to the collective well-being and respecting individuality. But in terms of control in a relationship, I have said very clearly that the male brain might actually be more inclined to deal with boundaries and control and honor and respect. Why is love called love? There are a few different origins for the English language, because in French we have l'amour, and in Spanish we have amour, and then in German we have Liebe, and I think that is very similar to the word for love. We also have the word in Russian, lublю, lubov, so to speak. So it comes from a couple different European origins. Why do people send mixed signals in love? Because they're trying to create stimulation, they're trying to create excitement, and they're also trying to ignite hormones, and they want to awaken someone's animal-like tendencies. And the same reason why they're trying to do more than one action to start a fire, they're also trying to do more than one action to create an emotional fire, to create the emotional spark within someone so that they can have some type of passionate physical encounter. For how long you have to wait to prove to him that you really loved him? Another very awkwardly worded question. Why don't we just say, how long do you have to wait to prove to him that you really love him? When you don't have to ask. That's my answer to all of those types of questions. How do you know that you're truly in love? When you don't have to ask. Can you ever be true Can you ever, let's rephrase this one ahead of time. Can you ever be your true self when you are in love? Absolutely, because some people say things, for example, and let's use the example of fashion, because of someone's appearance when they say, "Oh, you changed your outfit. You look so much better now. You look better than you did before." And I heard this from Chris Crocker, of all people. But what he said was that, no, you either accept all of me or none of me. Not just you're only allowed to look this certain way or act this certain way or behave this certain way. As long as someone is behaving in a non-destructive way, then their feelings and plans and ideas should be welcome. So can you ever be your true self when you're in love? Absolutely. How do you connect with your loved ones so deeply? By sharing honest, raw emotion and finding people whom you feel safe around. Why does love cause depression, anxiety, and fear of loss? I believe that this is connected to the message of Buddhism, talking about how people suffer because of their desires. And we first have to recognize that people will suffer, and people suffer because they desire something in which they cannot have, and that they can eliminate their desires by following the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, so to speak. But perhaps it is more accurate to say something in a secular way, that people want things and they feel that their desires are unfulfilled, and that leads them to suffering. This can be very easily viewed as envy or greed or jealousy, just wanting what other people have, or being greedy for something that is more in the abstract, just like more wealth, so to speak. How long does it take to get over someone you love? In some ways, never, because even if you can forget the person, it's going to alter your personality in a certain way. What makes love so perfect? Existence, consciousness, and bliss. How to find the right person for a lifelong relationship. When this question was asked on an episode of Free Domain Radio, the host said that some people fish with a net, but what you need to do is fish with dynamite and allow everything to come to the surface and examine everyone. And there's also the term low-hanging fruit, avoiding low-hanging fruit, because if someone is very easily obtainable, then maybe they're not necessarily good for you. It's about truly evaluating someone's personality traits and evaluating the personality traits of your parents so you don't recreate their same mistakes. Why do you always feel that you need someone to love you? Because love is a good thing. Why do some people not believe in love anymore? Because they didn't get what they desired. Therefore, they blame society, they blame the world, they blame all of humanity, and they believe that there is some type of injustice against them, so they choose to reject it because it is a painful experience. And we also have, how can you communicate with someone before losing or hurting yourself? So I believe when they say losing, they're referring specifically to a romantic relationship. At some point, though, I think the honest answer is not in the way that this question is worded, is to let the other person go. Not trying to keep someone in a relationship, not trying to get somebody back, but just to let them go, move on, and find someone new to love them. Why do people realize that mixed signals is the only way to move as far away from someone? Well, I certainly don't believe that mixed signals are a good way to move away from someone. If anything, I think that mixed signals create a lot of confusion because on the one hand someone is saying yes and on the other hand they are saying no. And people only listen to the one in which they truly desire because they want to manipulate. People have a very, very strong desire for power. If you love yourself, will you marry yourself? No, you won't, because you don't need to. You already are you. Can you own a person you love? Not likely. You would expect that there would have to be a certain, as we said before, acknowledging someone's right to individuality. If we believe that that is a good thing, which I do, then you wouldn't be able to own the other person. Would you prefer to love a virgin or non-virgin? I would love someone based on their character, not based on either one of those. Who loves who more? I think that there will always be who loves who more. It's just going to depend. It's not going to be masculine and feminine, but there will be one partner who loves the other partner more. Would you rather love a person of the same sex or the opposite, or none? I would rather love someone of the opposite sex because that's my own orientation, but people can be different. Can you love a person and still stay with them even after the romantic love has ended and remain friends? I think that perhaps you could, but you would really have to set some very clear boundaries. Thank you so much for listening to the questions about love on AstroPsych 400. As always, you can like and subscribe if you hear this in the morning. Good night.